Am I open to feedback even when it's difficult to hear? As I reflect on the many years I've been privileged to live, the question of whether I am truly open to feedback, even when it's difficult to hear, stands out as one of the most vital areas of personal growth. This is a question that many of us, regardless of our stage in life, must wrestle with. At every age, whether in our youth or in our advanced years, we are constantly offered opportunities for improvement, and these often come through feedback from others. The challenge is not whether we receive feedback, but whether we can receive it with humility, wisdom, and grace, particularly when it's difficult to hear. The Bible is full of verses that highlight the importance of humility and teach us how to receive correction. Proverbs 12:1 says, "Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid." This verse cuts straight to the point. It teaches us that a willingness to accept correction and feedback is a sign of wisdom and understanding. When we reject correction or feedback, we risk stagnating and becoming closed-minded, believing that we have nothing left to learn. On the other hand, when we embrace the feedback that challenges us, we invite growth and transformation. At the heart of being open to feedback lies humility. Jesus exemplified this quality throughout his life. Despite his divine nature, he constantly sought to teach his followers and listen to the concerns of those around him. His willingness to receive criticism, particularly from his disciples or from religious leaders, showed that he valued the opportunity to learn and teach. In Matthew 18:15-17, Jesus provided a framework for addressing conflicts and misunderstandings with others, advising his followers to approach one another with humility and an open heart. This framework encourages us to view feedback as a tool for reconciliation and growth, not as a personal attack. Psychologically, our ability to accept feedback is closely linked to our sense of self-worth. Research in psychology suggests that individuals with high self-esteem are often more willing to accept constructive criticism because they view it as an opportunity to improve rather than a reflection of their inadequacies. In contrast, those with lower self-esteem may interpret feedback as a personal affront, leading them to become defensive or dismissive. One of the most profound psychological insights I've learned over the years is that receiving feedback requires self-awareness. When we understand and accept our limitations, we are more likely to approach feedback with an open mind and a willingness to learn. Over the years, I've had moments where receiving feedback was not easy. There were times when people I respected pointed out areas where I was failing or needed improvement. At first, my ego was hurt. I felt embarrassed or even angry that my weaknesses were being exposed. But with time and reflection, I realized that these instances were some of the most pivotal moments in my life. These difficult conversations, although uncomfortable at the time, often led me to deeper self-awareness and growth. In these moments, I learned to pause, listen, and reflect rather than react impulsively. The Bible teaches us the importance of being slow to anger and quick to listen. James 1:19-20 encourages us, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." This verse underscores the wisdom in receiving feedback with a calm spirit, allowing the truth to sink in before we respond in haste. I have come to understand that feedback is a gift. It is a means by which God, through others, helps us grow in character, understanding, and wisdom. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." This simple but powerful metaphor illustrates the way in which our interactions with others, especially those moments of correction or difficult feedback, can refine us. Just as a blade becomes sharper through contact with another hard surface, so too do we become more refined through the sharpening process of receiving constructive criticism. However, there are times when feedback can feel harsh, unkind, or even unjust. In these moments, the question remains, can we still accept it with grace? The key here is to separate the delivery of feedback from its content. Just because feedback may be delivered in a way that is difficult to hear does not mean that the feedback itself is invalid. It is easy to dismiss criticism when it stings. But the wisdom lies in learning to sift through the delivery and focus on the message. Sometimes even the harshest criticism can contain nuggets of truth that can help us grow if we are willing to listen with humility and discernment. On the other hand, not all feedback is meant to be accepted. Sometimes we encounter criticism that is malicious, unhelpful, or misinformed. The Bible teaches us to use discernment in such cases. In Matthew 7-6, Jesus advises, "Do not give dogs what is sacred, do not throw your pearls to pigs." This suggests that not all feedback is valuable or worthy of our attention. Discernment is key in deciding which feedback is constructive and which is destructive. The ability to filter out harmful feedback without becoming defensive or bitter is an important skill that comes with maturity. In practical terms, the process of receiving difficult feedback often involves a few essential steps. First, we must cultivate the ability to listen deeply. Listening, as described in Proverbs 18:13, is to answer before listening. That is folly and shame. When we are open to hearing feedback, we must resist the urge to interrupt or immediately defend ourselves. Instead, we should give the speaker the space to express their thoughts fully, allowing us to understand the feedback in its entirety before responding. Second, we must practice self-reflection. Once we have received the feedback, it is important to reflect on its validity and how it applies to our lives. Is there truth in what has been said? How can we grow from this feedback? Reflection helps us process feedback in a constructive way and move beyond the emotional reaction it might initially provoke. This step is critical because it turns feedback into actionable insights that can lead to tangible growth. Finally, it is essential to take action. Feedback is only valuable if it leads to change. The Bible encourages us to be doers of the word, not just hearers. James 1:22 states, "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, do what it says." Similarly, in the realm of feedback, we must take the insights we receive and apply them to our lives. Growth is not a passive experience, it requires action. Whether the feedback is about a personal relationship, a professional skill, or an aspect of our character, taking intentional steps to improve is the ultimate measure of whether we have truly absorbed the lesson. The process of accepting and growing from feedback can also have profound health benefits. Neuroscientific research has shown that feedback, particularly when it is constructive, triggers the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter. This reinforces the positive behaviors that result from growth and improvement. This is consistent with the biblical principle that discipline and correction lead to eventual peace and joy. Hebrews 12:11 says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." Just as physical exercise strengthens the body, so does the discipline of receiving and applying feedback strengthen the mind and spirit. Over time, I have come to view difficult feedback not as a source of frustration, but as an opportunity for spiritual and personal refinement. The lessons learned from receiving feedback, whether positive or negative, have shaped my character and deepened my faith. As I age, I understand more clearly that the process of growth is lifelong. Each piece of feedback, no matter how difficult it may be to hear, becomes a tool in the hands of God to shape me into the person He desires me to be. In conclusion, being open to feedback, especially when it is difficult to hear, requires humility, discernment, and a willingness to grow. The Bible teaches us that correction and discipline are part of God's plan for our lives, and psychological research supports the idea that feedback is essential for both personal and spiritual development. As I continue on this journey of life, I strive to embrace feedback with an open heart, knowing that it is through this process that I can become more like Christ and fulfill the purpose He has for me.